Hey, hello. Welcome back to Believe You Are a Good Mom. I have a special guest today. So excited. So, Theresa is a friend of mine, and I didn't even know how to say her last name till 5 seconds ago. So, let me practice it. So, Theresa Diulus, is that right?
That's correct.
Diulus. So, we did an advanced coach certification training with Jody Moore together. We were in the same little group. And so, this is a fun reunion for us, I guess. I
Definitely.
haven't seen her in a while. It's been a minute. So, Theresa actually did a master's in public health and nutrition. She has 4 kids. They're age 20 to 26 right now. And so she's kind of on the other end of the raising kids spectrum as I am. I guess there's still a whole nother. Well, there's
Yeah.
lots of ends. Anyway, sure not the end, right?
Nope,
Um,
never.
a different season, shall we say. Anyway, so she was coaching on nutrition and then she kind of pivoted to coaching moms like me. So fun. We love all the moms. And then found that anxiety is a really hot topic. So I think we're going to focus on talking about anxiety today, but I'll let Theresa introduce herself more and then just jump in. Tell
Yes.
me all the things.
Thanks, Emily. Yes, I'm excited to be here. And as you said, I have been coaching moms who are wanting more calm and less overwhelm in their life. And I have discovered that anxiety kept coming up. So I've recently started just focusing on that. And Emily and I were talking a little bit before we started recording, and I was sharing with her that technically speaking, anxiety by definition is a noun. It's considered a noun. And I thought it was kind of funny that it's defined, though, as a feeling of worry and nervousness, usually about an event or something that's imminent. And so adds to the anxiety, no pun intended, of the fact that it's saying that it's a feeling. And when we talk about coaching, we want to define something as typically being an actual event or a thought or a feeling. So again, we're trying to calm things down when we're talking about anxiety. So to have a definition even be a little bit unclear is kind of funny.
Yeah.
So, um, but we were talking about, like I said, when we talk about anxiety, I like to think of it as I was using an example of cotton candy. When you think of cotton candy, for anybody who's listening to this and not watching, cotton candy is usually made in a basin that has, the little sugar being spun around, and they stick a stick in there to gather it. And I think of our thoughts in our head when we have anxiety, just swirling around and swirling around. And you can stick that stick in there, and all of a sudden it just starts gathering onto it. And so that's what we try to do when we are calming down and reducing that anxiety. And because we want to gather all those thoughts on that stick, and then we can just start picking one off at a time. If we can just, name that, whatever it is, whether it's the event that might be causing the anxiety, or just name the feeling. Because usually there's always something. Again, use cotton candy as an example, because it's cotton candy as the analogy, because it is sticky. And I think of anxiety as being a sticky feeling, sticky event, because it's usually stuck to something else. There's some underlying feeling or event, like by the definition saying there's an imminent event. We're at the time of year, we're going into the holiday season in the United States, whether you celebrate Thanksgiving, typically, other holidays coming up, Christmas, Hanukkah, all those ones that are coming up. And so whether you realize it or not, as moms, a lot of times with school holidays, school parties, even families coming over, there can be all those things that even if you're a list maker, you might not realize there's just a lot of stuff going on. And sometimes you just might be going, and all of a sudden just have that overwhelming feeling. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when I'm talking about anxiety. Is that something you experience ever, Emily?
Yeah, for sure. And I really like the cotton candy analogy because the thoughts, like they feel so important and they're swirling around. But when you put cotton candy in your mouth, like it's gone like that. Like,
Yes.
so it seems really big, really fluffy, really crazy, but then it's really a lot of nothing, you know? And so when we can, like you said, like find what that stick is that gathers it up, then whatever the analogy is for like putting it in your mouth, that's
Yeah.
like working with a coach, maybe like figuring
Yes.
out like what the thoughts even are, then
Yes.
they're not so big anymore. Like we can
Yes.
suck them down into like the tiny piece of sugar that it actually is,
Yes.
that is worth looking into, but it's not as big as we're making it in our own brains.
No. And that's the thing, whether it's, again, naming what it is, naming that actual feeling, and whether it's the tools that we can provide as coaches, like you said, actually coaching, any of those things. And like we have, whether it's tips, tricks, or however you want to use it. One of the simple things we can do, again, the first stop is naming, realizing and recognizing this is anxiety I'm feeling. It's just when you start to feel overwhelmed, and it can act out in simple ways like finding yourself feeling very, overwhelmed in the sense of nervous, being just nervous energy, having nervous energy. You can find yourself crying. We as women, we get a bad rap a lot of the times because of hormones, for example, but it could be, you could be feeling like you're overreacting in different ways like that. You could find yourself being very short in a different way, and more so than normal. Let me put that way, acting more outside of the realm of your normal, if you more than the once a month that you might be that way. Let me say that. Finding yourself not wanting to do the things that you signed up to do, for example, for school, or maybe dreading getting out of bed. Maybe you find yourself finding very drawn to watching TV or a series that you not normally would watch, or reading more books than normal, or saying no to your kids. Like there's a lot of ways that this can show up in different ways for people. But the big thing is just naming the feeling, like, oh, I've noticed I'm feeling X. We have feelings lists. I'm looking at Emily's. I noticed when I first got on the call, she has a feelings pillow behind her. There are feelings lists. You can Google feelings list if you are at a loss for knowing what you're feeling. And so that's the first step, is just acknowledging it. I'm feeling anxiety. And again, if you picture yourself holding a stick of cotton candy, pick it off and just say, okay, right now I'm feeling this, and put it in your mouth. And no, a feeling is just a vibration in our body, something that we can process and feel, and it is gone. Like you said, temporary thing. It's gone in a matter of up to 90 seconds. And if you need help with that, Emily's a great coach. She's available. I'm available. We can help you process those feelings. But there's other techniques, especially dealing with anxiety. If you are with little kids, particularly, one of the funnest things, and I remember doing this, I'm dating myself. I don't know if the Wiggles are even still around. But there was a song that they sang, dance your sillies out, but even just something, do a dance party with your kids. Breaking the tension with doing something physical like that, of having a dance party with whatever song, whether it's one of your kids' favorite songs or your favorite songs, and just stopping an activity and just, come on, we're going to do this. Whether it's a dance party or taking your kids to the playground, or just getting outside to take a break for a little bit, getting some fresh air. Something as simple as that can just stop that tension in your body and break those feelings that are happening. So that's another really quick and easy way to stop that. Again, picture yourself picking off another piece of cotton candy if you want, and putting it in your mouth and making it dissolve. So you're breaking away at those thoughts that are swirling in your head. So that's just another quick tip I have for that.
Yeah. So I am remembering, hold on, like 5 minutes before this call started.
Yeah.
I was like trying to throw the baby in her bed and get the other kid on a show, and my husband's calling me, and it was like, and I caught myself, because I'm really good at like noticing my thoughts now, because I've been doing this for many years. At first I was like, there's no thoughts, there's just feelings. It's just knee-jerk reactions. And now I've been able to slow it down and can notice what the thoughts are, like you're saying, like picking off those thoughts of cotton candy. So I have a very recurring thought that leads to the overwhelm and the anxiety that you're describing, is I don't have time for this. So I was like, oh, I started getting ready for this like way too late. I have to change my shirt and and put some earrings on and all the things, and I'm like, I don't have time for this. So like try to find the remote to turn on a show for her and like talk to my husband. I just was like, I can't talk about this right now. And I'm like starting to get all frazzled. And so I let myself feel the feelings and then figure out like, what am I thinking? And sometimes I don't have to really dig too deep in my brain, because it already came out my mouth. I usually like say what I'm thinking, and that's when it clicked for me, is because I said that phrase. I was like, I don't have time for this. I was like, oh, I know this thought. I've worked with this thought a lot, especially getting ready for church. Good night. Like that is a huge triggering moment for moms. And so I do have time for this. I have the perfect amount of time. I breathe. and kind of calm my nervous system that thinks it's
Yes.
like fire if I'm late for this call with Theresa. It's like, she'll be okay if like I'm 1 minute late. And I, of course, wasn't even late. I'm just the type that's like, if I'm not early, I'm late. And
Yeah,
so I have to
exactly.
remind myself, because the clock does not need to rule my life. I can rule the clock, things like that, that I've come up with that kind of remind me,
Yeah. Well, and what
like
you said,
dissolve the cotton candy.
yeah, and what you said is exactly, I mean, breaking that, like, because you even speaking that out loud, because that's, a great technique. And when I said name that feeling, like that brain connection, it's been proven neurologically of speaking out loud, and even that all will be well kind of a thing. Like, I'm not wrong, don't make yourself wrong. And knowing that, but if you have to say it and, your kids aren't going to care, your husband's not going to care. It's like, I'm going nuts, like, or whatever it is you're speaking, like, but like you flipped it on the positive, like, I can't do this, but then like, yes, I can, it will be fine. Like, whatever it is you have to speak the script into your head, again, you're eating up, if you really want to picture the cotton
Candy.
candy being eaten completely up, that's fine, because you can just go ahead and get another one.
Yeah.
Getting all those thoughts and collecting them, or whatever analogy works for you.
Yeah.
And I think that thing, and this is something we learned, we think about a spectrum. At one end, it's all of those thoughts, and the other end is having them completely gone. And again, it's going to keep replenishing. We don't need to aim for it to be completely gone. We just want to try to be somewhere in the middle, because that's where we're going to get the most empowerment for ourselves, is knowing we don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to have it all gone. We are just wanting to create some calm and breaking that pattern. You made the comment, you had that repeated. Typically, we learn that having the same thought over and over again becomes a belief. But in this case, I don't think it's a belief. I think that's the difference with anxiety and having feelings like this. And in your case, I mean, again, you used a great example, getting ready for church, because church happens, for some people twice a week, some people it's more than that, but at least once a week most of the times. And so I wouldn't call it a belief in the sense of it's more a habit, I would say, more likely. And so when we know it's going to happen, and as we also know, a lot of times things happen outside of our control. What happens if everybody's ready and all of a sudden somebody trips and falls, they get hurt, or all of a sudden I've had this happen, someone spikes a fever, and then it's like, okay, now what? Who's taking who and what's going to happen? Like, we are managing so much in our minds all the time, as moms especially. And I'm not discrediting, because some dads are doing the same thing, whoever, but we're talking as moms right now. So we've got, as they say, the million balls juggling. So that's, again, where it's like, if we have to speak through, like, okay, I've got this, this, and this, I can only do this, and recognizing that. And also just patting ourselves on the back. I think a lot of times we don't stop and do that. So speaking out loud, whether it is writing down, however people process, I think that's the other thing to recognize. A lot of times people aren't taught how to do that, because we're just, expected to do things, show up, be the good mom, be the good wife, and serve in that way. So I think that's another thing that can break down that anxiety, is to honor ourselves in that respect too. But yeah, I think that's a great example to show, as far as like, okay, this just happened right before.
I know. It happens all the time. So I've been working on this forever. There's no way to ever get rid of the cotton candy in my
No, and I
experience.
don't think that's the goal. I don't think that's the goal. And like I said, I think managing it is the important thing. And I don't mean to come on to say, oh, I've got the cure, because there isn't. In my belief, I don't believe there is a cure. I think it is a manner of managing it. And just what I'm proposing is just ways to help, if people haven't thought of it, if it's not something you've heard of, deep breathing is another thing. If you're in the middle, say you did all of that rushing to get to church and you get there, or even if you were coming here on this podcast and you were still feeling that, something you can be doing that I'm not even aware of is doing the kind of shallow deep breathing that I wouldn't be hearing you, but it would be calming you, because it does psychologically, neurologically, physiologically, it calms the central nervous system down and all of that. It's been proven to do that. The other thing, a physical thing you can do under a table, and I can't credit who I learned this from, but I know I learned it years ago, and it may be a yoga type of a thing, but you can be literally going back, touching all of your fingers to your thumb back and forth, kind of a methodical little thing. Because again, it's a distraction that's quiet. It's not something, and it's been several years now that I know fidget spinners were really popular at Christmas time, or, for kids, for stocking stuffers and stuff. And if that's something people participate in, I think they ended up getting banned in schools because they were such a distraction for kids. But, the purpose of those were I thought originally as an occupational therapy thing for children who were on the spectrum or neurodiverse, somehow. And they
Uh-huh.
served a purpose originally, not just to annoy parents.
Yeah.
But again, there's a psychology behind things like that. So this is
Uh-huh.
something that you could be doing for yourself. Again, if you're just thinking, or even counting, it's funny. I don't know if you're a fan of Dancing with the Stars or watching something like that. There was a person who was on this season earlier who was very new to dancing, and he
Uh-huh.
was counting all of his steps and he was doing it out loud. Like you could tell, like he was 1, 2, 3, and
Yeah,
that
you
was
can see his mouth
criticism.
move.
Yes, and they're like,
Uh-huh.
you need to not count.
Yeah.
I know you're new to this, but you need to not be when you're doing the steps. So stuff like that, that people are doing because it's an important thing for them to keep track of. But
Uh-huh.
in this case, you could be doing something like this under the table, just to to calm yourself,
Mhm.
But anyway, so those are just little ways that you can be doing to calm yourself. When you are nervous, when you are feeling anxious, when things are building up, and you can be thinking to yourself, I will be okay. Whatever a mantra, like, we were talking about our faith earlier, repeating a verse, repeating something in your head, or again, when you're sitting there if you're in a pickup line, I know
Yeah.
that's a hotbed thing or place for some people.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes is having the patience, or might be having the anxiety driving itself sometimes, waiting in a doctor's office with a sick kid, that can be trying, especially if it's going on an hour that you've been waiting. I think
Mhm.
anxiety can show up sometimes, especially if you're worried. How sick is my child?
Mhm.
And that can build, you can have all kinds of scenarios building in your head sometimes. I think, I don't know, is that something you've
Yeah,
ever
yeah, yeah.
experienced?
And when you talk about even the definition from the dictionary of anxiety, how it's worrying about something in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety
Mm-hmm.
lives in the future. And
Yep.
so if you can remind yourself, I'm worried about my child's diagnosis, like I don't know how sick is he, like when are they going to come out here? If you can, I mean, in the heat of the moment, I always say just feel the feels, like process the feelings like we've been talking about. But then when you're kind of calmed down enough, you've done some breathing and things that you're ready to look at those thoughts, then you can remind yourself, like, my brain is in imagination land right now, and we're like anxiety and fear and things like that is a misuse of my imagination. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling anxious right now because I'm thinking that whatever might happen in the future, and to remind ourselves that's not happening right now. Like right
Right.
now, he's fine. He's right here by me. Yeah, he's not 100% healthy, but he's here. He's okay. We're at the doctor. They can take care of him. Everything will be okay. And if, I get some diagnosis, whatever, I'm here at the doctor's office. They can help me, all the things. And so if we're going to use our imagination to go worst case scenario, we might as well use our imagination to go best case scenario, but we don't
Exactly.
default to that.
I love
And
that.
so
Yeah.
then we have to like on purpose remind ourselves, or we could go in there and they'll be like, oh, he's totally fine. And we'll be like, huh. And we walk out with the same symptoms we walked in with. But if someone just reassures us that they're totally fine, that we believe
Exactly.
that. And so
Yes.
we can make those stories up in our head either way. We can
Yep.
make up a story that makes us feel anxious, or we can make up a story that helps us calm down. And
Exactly.
it's made up either way. So let's use our imaginations to serve us instead of freak us out.
I love that. And again, we talk about, in general, how do we want to show up? We decide how we want to show up, ahead of time, and that's something, we can practice as far as saying, at any point in time, make that decision, every day, how do we choose to live our lives? I want to show up today. We don't choose to have these triggers, that make us anxious. And I think that's the thing, to not judge ourselves, like when these things happen. But if you decide ahead of time, kind of like, when your child gets sick, typically, if they have a fever, some thinking might be to not give them Tylenol, for example. But if you have a regimen, let's just say you have a regimen for when your child, say, let's put it this way. If your child has asthma, you have medicines to give your child who has asthma. So you have a protocol.
Yeah.
So you could have an anxiety protocol that
Yeah.
you do. So you just decided ahead of time, okay, when I feel this way, this is what I'm going to do. So that's another thing that, I work on with people to have for themselves. Depends on how frequently it's happening for people. And
Mhm.
obviously there's different scenarios. And like you brought up, it's that whole thinking about the future. And so, and some people that I work with do have, children that have chronic illnesses. So that's a different thing too, because some
Mhm.
people are working on that letting go. It's a control issue.
Mhm.
Honestly, like you said, it's a control of letting go of fear of the future
Mhm.
and recognizing what we can and can't control. and again, faith does come into play with a lot of people, of releasing belief that they can control anything in the future. I mean, we have today.
Yeah.
We can control what's happening today. We can't control what's happening tomorrow. And we can let, that belief in our higher power or God, or, whoever people are believing in, but and that comes into something else, and whether we're getting peace from that. So, but if we can come up with a protocol for, okay, when this starts happening, recognizing in our bodies, oh, this is anxiety, I'm feeling anxiety. Here's 3 things that I like to typically do that usually work. And so kind of having that toolbox thing, we talk about having coaching tools or what we do. And so, but again, like I said in the very beginning, even with the stickiness and knowing that anxiety usually pairs, you'll start to identify usually patterns of those top 3 feelings that most people typically have, whether it is worry usually pairs with a future. I think fear, a lot of times people have fear. And, we were talking about the holidays before, look, with Thanksgiving coming up, and it is a very real thing when people have a lot of company coming over, for example. Like maybe it is, oh my gosh, how am I going to get everything done? I think that's a very common thing.
Yeah.
Again, if it's, or I've never cooked for this many people before, what am I going to do? And then it might be that fear of control of like, I can't do it all, like you were talking about before even, but just legitimately reaching out for help, the asking for help and stuff like that. So sometimes it's a matter of just going through with people and recognizing it's okay to ask for help. You don't have to do it all. Like literally giving permission, giving people the permission to kind of like a doctor's note or a school note. It's a new situation for some people. So all of those things are just new situations for people too. So it just depends. And that's where having a coach can really help. I think in some ways it's neutral. We're neutral territory. We're objective third parties. And so exactly. I think that's a nice, we just provide that added, I don't know, backbone or yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I just, you and I both are big proponents of coaching. So I do think that's a nice thing. But I know even just listening to us, it's another way to get tips and tools to help people at this time of year, especially. So
yeah, because even just thinking about like the logistics of how do I get this meal going, like at what time do I start cooking which, and what do I do, and then it's another day, just like all the days, and every day is overwhelmed with all the things you have to do with a house full of littles. It's like every single morning I'm dealing with this, and then we're gonna do a Thanksgiving special thing. It's like, yeah, so when you just let your head go crazy with all the thoughts, then every single thought is like releasing a feeling into your body. And so all of those feelings are turning into the overwhelm and piling on anxiety on top of that and all the things. And so to be able to slow it down and like notice what the thoughts actually even are, to then get some action line help, even like, well, then write down how many minutes each one needs to be cooked, and who can you maybe ask to help you with this, or what can you do, all those things. It's just when it's all in your head, then it's just overwhelmed, because there's so many things flowing through your body. But to learn to process those through, and then to look at the thoughts and figure it out, and know that nothing's gone wrong. Like your brain is working exactly how your brain's supposed to work, and that it is a lot. It's a lot, and you can do it.
Yeah.
And to even recognize, like the other thing I was thinking was, speaking of how every day is a lot, not just the holidays. So if I am, it's like, holy, some weird beeping happening. Okay, so speaking of it's a lot, it's going on right now. So we just hit pause and came back. I don't know what I was saying, but it doesn't matter. So the point is, we've got this, right? In the thick of it. All right. So Theresa, let's tell the people how they can get more from you. Where can they find you? And
I have a website at theresadiulus.com, and that's my name, TheresaDiulus.com. And I don't have much on my website other than there is the way to schedule to set up a consult with me or sign up with me. Like I said, this anxiety program I have, it's just new. It's a 4-week program, and for the price of a cup of coffee, you can sign up for a session. It's a beta program, so this one is new. And I'd be happy to coach with you otherwise too. But so And I just wanted to reiterate with anxiety, just the reassurance that you've got this, and you just remind yourself of that. And again, having that protocol set up. The other thing I was going to say is to just remember to start small and name those feelings. Like you said, the calm is what creates the reassurance in your body, and to remember that naming the feeling is the big thing. Think of the stickiness with the cotton candy, that it's paired with something else, that having anxiety is just a general term, but that there's something underlying. There's either that feeling or the thought that's coming with it. And to dig deeper a little bit to see what it is, just notice it and say, I'm noticing, I'm feeling this. And
Yeah.
you're kind of breaking, you're piercing through like a balloon, like you're popping the balloon of anxiety when you notice what's causing it by noticing what the thought is or what the feeling is. So you're gaining that control. The control that you're seeking is there. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that we're talking about cotton candy and balloons and things. And so that helps because it just feels so heavy sometimes, you know? And of course, I think we talked about this before we even hit record. So let me just clarify that we're not talking about like clinical anxiety, that you definitely would want to see a therapist or a doctor and get medication to help with any sort of like chemical imbalance or whatever, but just the regular feelings of everyday day life, you know, that they just pile up, and they, you know, resisting them especially makes them persistent. And so
Yeah.
learning how to manage them is awesome, and it's been life-changing for both of us, and that's why we love to share it with other
Yes.
people. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was so fun.
Yes, it was.
And I will see you all later. I'm like, this is a podcast. I'll hear you later. You can hear me later. Anyway, okay, till next time. You are a good mom. Bye.